Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Thank you for coming. I'm so excited to be here. Bear with me as I've never done this multitasking of going on my computer and doing this, so thank you so much for bearing with me. Okay, so my name is Jen Ament, and I'm a multidisciplinary artist that specializes in printmaking and painting. And I've been asked to speak on anxiety today. Thank you, Duffy, for nominating me for that, because it makes perfect sense. So after going to college in Denver and then in San Francisco, I came to Seattle. I didn't love my experience in college and had kind of no clear direction and was full of doubt and insecurity, but had a major love for music. And I fell into the small and amazing music scene that was happening here at the time and went to every show that I could get into. The tiny Seattle community of kids back then were making art and film, but success wasn't necessarily the end goal back then. We were just kind of having fun. So I worked in film and retail, waited tables at local restaurants, engaged in some major reckless behavior, securing my place in the abyss of feeling like a failure. And I worried a lot about what my future held. So now I need to get to this, sorry. Oh, whoops, we missed that part. So here's some of my early work. The Ferry boat was one of my earliest pieces that I did, and it was obviously inspired by Seattle, but I live in West Seattle, and I am always walking in Lincoln Park over there, and this is the Vashon Ferry, and yeah, that was one of my first. And then this was from my experience in the scene back in the day. Went to just a million shows and had a lot of fun and raised my hands a lot at a lot of shows. And then this is kind of my rebellion against the man, whatever. And this is what I felt like sometimes with my anxiety, just wanting to put a lampshade over my head and hide, like many of us. So then I started dating someone who happened to be an artist, graphic designer, who I would watch make art with no fear and an enormous amount of ease, which sort of blew my mind because I had created a story in my head that it was too hard and I was supposed to follow a particular path or know that I was good at something early in life. I was feeling frustrated with myself one day, and he told me the simplest of ideas, which was creating something you're proud of isn't as hard as you might think. And although those words took hold in my psyche, I still didn't believe them for many years longer. I held on to the idea of he went to the right school and I didn't. He was born with a gene that I didn't have. He doesn't overthink things and just does them. So this story stayed with me for a huge part of my life. And I had the idea in my head of what the art that I was creating was supposed to look like, and I wasn't quite pulling it off. My anxiety told me every story that would stop me from starting something, and I had a constant gnawing feeling of failure, and I worried a lot about what the future held. I wasn't committing to anything because then I wouldn't have to fail at anything. So after getting married to that same man and having kids, I was finally forced to look at my anxiety and the life that I had created for myself. And although parenthood taught me what unconditional love was, I realized where I felt the most unfulfilled was not feeling good at something outside of my family life. So I started taking some classes at night. First, I took a portrait painting class, and I thought I sucked. Then I took a pottery class, and I thought I sucked. Then I took a watercolor class where a teacher gave me the impression that I sucked, so I thought I sucked. After almost throwing in the towel, I took a printmaking class and an abstract painting class with a great teacher, and I didn't immediately feel amazing at it, but I decided to stick with it for more than a week and started feeling like I might not suck. So I started feeling better at it, and I kept doing it. The more I created, the more self-doubt was getting chipped away at, and my feelings of competence started growing stronger. I would get lost in it, and the entire day would go by without me even knowing what time it was. I started drawing and carving linoleum like a madwoman. And then these are some slides of my earlier days as well, kind of. So this is called Vices, and this is has to do with my anxiety, really. It's kind of the Pussy Riot era, and we all have our vices. Some of us money, some of us food, sex, joints, alcohol, pills. Yeah. just reeks of anxiety, right? This is another one. This is called Going Places. So as my confidence grew, I decided to take an encaustic painting class. My friends would come over to my house, see my work, and would ask me to make them one. And one friend had a friend who owned a home store, and I started selling my work. I was 38 years old. I sold my work at a few local art fairs, I did local pop-ups, and things started getting busier for me. I had a blog at the time and had a few big bloggers following me, and then they did posts on me, and then I moved solely over to Instagram because blogging was just ridiculous, taking so much out of me, as we all know. And people did post there as well, and then private clients and interior designers from all over started reaching out for commissions. Then my work was featured in several publications, and then Architectural Digest, and later Metropolitan Home. So this is the cover of Metropolitan Home. And this is the interior. This is another encaustic. So if any of you don't know what encaustic painting is, it's basically wax and damar crystals, beeswax and damar crystals, which are, damar crystals are tree sap from, I get it from South America, but it's a beautiful material. It almost looks like amber, and it has bee parts in it and all kinds of amazing stuff that bees are attracted to, but it's a beautiful medium, and what you do is you kind of melt it in a griddle, and the wax and the damar crystals melt together, which make it a really hard surface, and then you mix paint into it. And then this is gold leaf that I use on the wax. This is actually at the Fry Museum store right now. This was one of the resist pieces that I did. Oops, sorry. So in the midst of working on a lot of commission encaustic work, my print work was discovered at a pop-up by a creative director at Starbucks, who then reached out to me to do a commission for them. And I've done several projects with Starbucks since. They're amazing to work with. And with all my anxiety around failure, I grew into a place where I somehow used my anxiety as fuel to create more work. What we tell ourselves we believe, and what we tell ourselves is not always real. For the longest time, I didn't believe I was good at much of anything, so I didn't do much of anything. It was only when I was ready to fail on a consistent, continual basis that I actually became okay with failure. And when I became okay with it, I didn't fear it as much, and I started to feel my anxiety lessen. This was a pivotal moment for me. After failing over and over again at class after class, job after job, in relationships, and many more areas, I came to the realization that it's so important to fail, and to fail enough to be okay with failure. I feel like the failure of relationships and more personal experiences gives us the opportunity to look at where we lack in our ability to give, or to be compassionate, or to empathize. But failures in our creative work can feel more like an opening or a reveal of boundless opportunity for ourselves and our ability to create. From those experiences, I built resilience, and resilience helped my anxiety. So now I will go on to a pivotal moment in my life that was a complete release of my anxiety, which I actually hope never to feel again, and then also a moment that was one of my largest sources of anxiety. Both have the common factor of a complete lack of control. The first one involves pills. So in the midst of some of the early days of big commissions and commercial work, my family went on a vacation to my best friend's ranch in Montana, and I rode a Polaris four-wheel ATV. I turned a corner, the vehicle tipped, and crushed my arm, and the doctor told me I might lose my arm. I then got a terrible infection and was in the hospital for an extensive stay, and the chaplain came in at one point. And oddly, this was the calmest state I've ever been in my life. Nothing will make you feel more alive than to think that you might die. Everything was put in perspective. So all I was focused on was my family. I felt great joy just thinking about the simplest of things, like the rising of the sun and my son's head on my chest. The most important things were put at the forefront. It took 1 year and 5 surgeries to be able to use my arm again. And I was creating art with one arm for a year. Strangely, it was incredibly empowering. I felt deep gratitude, and with that gratitude, my anxiety lessened, and I kept at it. And I'm not suggesting that you get into a horrific accident to release your anxiety. But it's important to remind yourself consistently how lucky we are to be here, how beautiful the moon is, listening to the birds chirping more, opening your senses, and looking up at the sky. So then I will move on to the time where my anxiety was out of control. And I'm guessing you can guess when that was. 2016. So the election, the physical symptoms of anxiety were like nothing I had ever felt. It literally felt like my body was on fire. I felt a constant state of panic, and the fact that we had absolutely no control over the situation was affecting many of us severely. I had a hard time working, and I felt stuck. So then I went to the Women's March in DC, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. I came home with a fire in my belly to do something in my community to help, and I started drawing immediately. So this is one of the pieces I did in that time. This is a piece where I felt like we all need to get out more and just get out in the streets and protest and do anything we can, and we need to open that jar, get out. This is actual real statistics. We are number one in anxiety in this country, which is pretty crazy. So without thinking too much about it, I felt a physical need for relief, and action felt like the only way to feel that feeling. So I very sloppily jotted down some thoughts, and I emailed a bunch of my artist friends and asked if they'd be willing to donate their work to be auctioned off for a fundraiser for the ACLU and Planned Parenthood. They all immediately said yes, and I formed Artists for Progress, which was an event that raised $20,000 and far exceeded my expectations. Yeah, it was amazing. Here's one of the auction items I did. I've always been influenced by the social movements happening in our culture and have shown that in my work, but I'd never done anything overtly political in my art, and 2016 changed all of that. My anxiety was leading me onto a new path. My anxiety was maybe even helping my creative process and making me a stronger artist. So this is the first Artists for Progress we did, right on that wall over there at the Piranha Shop. So the action of doing a fundraiser relieved my anxiety. Action is the key word here. I believe if we were to act more with empathy guiding us, we will feel relief in our anxiety. It doesn't have to be the action of doing a big event. It could be volunteering, sharing your talents, serving, cooking, or cleaning for those in need. And I know this is really simplistic, but this is what's worked for me, just the simple act of acting. So this is one of my favorite things that I've ever done. This is with Urban Artworks, who is the most amazing nonprofit that provides opportunities for underserved youth and contemporary artists to create amazing murals all around Seattle. I know you've seen them. Kathleen is here, and we're so happy to be collaborating with them on Artists for Progress, and they just do amazing work around town and create beautiful murals everywhere. So they offered to partner with Artists for Progress and asked if I would do a mural. And this is on Rainier and Dearborn here in Seattle. One of the funnest things I've ever done. Okay, and then I ended up doing this fun animation project with Electric Sheep, and I think someone from Electric Sheep is here, but they're an amazing motion animation company. They do motion design, and we created these from my drawings. It was really cool. So that's what we want for 2018, right? Yes. We want shit to change. And this is how I felt in 2016 and 2017, just wanting to hide in my house, like so many of us. And this is what I hope for us in the very near future, that we all think about our inner activists and get out more in the streets and do something. Okay. So this was just an important theme that I wanted to bring up today, which is it's a sad day when you find out that it's not accident or time or fortune, but just yourself that kept things from you. For years, I didn't believe that I was good enough to do much of anything, so I didn't. My anxiety kept me from evolving as a human in many different facets of my life. I don't really remember feeling anxiety before middle school. In middle school, I learned it through my own deep concern for others' opinions and the idea that I had in my head that other people had much more knowledge and talent than I. What I know now is that that will always be the case. There will always be someone that is smarter than you, has their shit more together than you, and is better than you. So how do we get to a place where you stop caring about that and focus on your own growth? In my opinion, it's honing on something, anything like cooking, accounting, volunteering, running, gardening, making art, whatever it is, get good at it. It's not as hard as your brain makes you think. There's this book, 10,000 Hours, which I agree with for the most part, the theory being that you do anything 10,000 hours and you will master it. In the constant doing, it should be more than just mechanical repetition. It should also be adjusting your execution over and over again to get closer to your goal and allowing yourself massive amounts of errors at first as you increase your knowledge. It will be messy and inconsistent, but it should be a deliberate practice. I think there are myths in consistency also, thinking certain ideas or phases are going to take you to this all-knowing place and then realizing that there is no all-knowing place. Life is a constant state of ups and downs, change, and growth. We all have the gift and ability to express ourselves. It's what we do with that gift. You will fail at your gift. Some of us fail harder than others, and some of us learn more from our failures than others. But it's up to you to keep moving through the failure. So here's a couple of things that bring me the most anxiety in my work life. Number one is the momentum to start on a project. When I get a job, I tend to always have the idea that I will start right away, and sometimes I do, but mostly I tend to push it off until the deadline is looming. This somehow works for me, but the weeks leading up to the start of the job produces enormous anxiety. I've learned that just starting a small action towards the job, whether it be sketching on a notepad or getting an earlier start to my studio, just taking the action, either small or big, will start me on a roll. Number two is the constant dilemma of whether or not I will ever work again, or whether my business will survive, or if the last job I did will be my last job ever. But now that I've been in business for 10 years, I know that things are always up and down and completely inconsistent. So I would almost define anxiety as experiencing failure in advance. It's like anxiety is acting as a protective mechanism to keep us from the feelings of failure in case we fail. There is the up, and then there's the job is over, and there's the temporary release. Then there's the build up. Sorry, I messed that up. There is the build up, and then the job is over, so there's a temporary release, and then the build up happens all over again. It's important to know that most of us will never fully be released from anxiety also, but we can keep it in check. So this is, again, another image at the Fry. Here's some print work I did with gold leaf and black ink. It's also for sale at the Fry. So the obvious answers of trying to keep our anxiety in check for me is exercise, putting the right things in our bodies. But here are some more specific things that work for me, and I've narrowed it down to 8. Number 1 is honesty with myself and others. Untruth puts me in a constant state of anxiety. And honesty also, I think, just automatically makes you an authentic person, and that's what we all want to be around, is authentic people. Number 2 is saying no and being okay with it. I think you can, people need to be okay with saying no. It's really important. Number 3, service to others. If I volunteer, if I help people, I feel less anxiety, period. Number 4 is to get outside more. Avoid the social media comparison trap rabbit hole, and also avoid watching the Kardashians. Let's all dream of a time when the future holds teachers and people, doctors and park employees as celebrity, because this is getting crazy. And number 4 is be humble and realize we could all use therapy whether or not we think we have an issue. Number 6, learn something new, take a class, teach yourself, but keep doing it. I still try to take classes on everything. I will take classes for the rest of my life. Number 7 is constantly reminding yourself to be grateful. Number 8 is knowing I'm a good person. Knowing you are a good person takes action. Action helps us know we are good people. Do one kind thing a day. Put a kind note in someone's mailbox. Pick up trash in the park on your walk. Do something good every day. Helping others, working to make tiny footprints in the direction of making the world a better place reduces anxiety. And in my opinion, the pinnacle of success and lessening our anxieties is taking the action to be a good person. And by that action, we become better people. It really can be that easy. Thank you so much.
Like questions?